again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, ready to talk some more modern Who from the Matt Smith era with my wonderful partner in time, wonderful friend, and someone who looks way too casual for a Wednesday, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
Hello, sweetie. Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Charles. Yes, I got home in time and...
Hey, I'm taken. Just saying.
That's all right. Linda, boy, there's just something beautiful. She has learned Wednesdays as podcast night. So, she always has my beverage ready. She has me an extra Diet Coke, and she has dinner ready most nights. So they're like, I know you need to go talk to Charles. So I am feeling good.
Well, how do I get that kind of setup? I gotta talk to my wife Lori about this. This isn't fair.
Yeah.
So here at episode 224, we're going to be talking The Time of Angels / Flesh and Stone, the two-parter from Matt Smith's first season, series 5, all the way back in 2010. Hard to believe this story has 11 years mileage on it already.
Yeah.
And this was one that we had discussed and Tom was interested in talking about. So without any further ado, let me introduce our wonderful special guest companion who we last talked to back when we talked The Lodger. Hey, another story from Series 5. I'm noticing a trend here. So please, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Comics writer and artist, Thom Zahler. How you doing, Tom?
Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be back here for my 15th appearance on... Oh, wait, we haven't done those yet. Sorry,
no,
that's in the wrong order.
Yes.
So you're saying you're from our future and we're just catching up, I guess.
Yes, but, spoilers.
Well, that's good.
Yes, spoilers, yes.
So how you been doing, man? What have you been up to?
Pandemic, so asterisk on everything, but pretty well. Actually, I just got my parents both vaccinated today, so that is a load off my mind.
Excellent. I got mine vaccinated not too long ago. My wife Lori goes in tomorrow for her first vaccination shot, and then I follow here 2 days from now. So.
Yeah, I got mine, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and Linda got hers yesterday. So we're
progress.
We're Team Pfizer. Not that we had a choice, right? We're like whichever one's available.
Right.
So we got ours, and so far I had a little headache. She's had nothing at all, except as Tom knows, she got up at 4:30 to go work out, and she goes, "I'm tired." Yes, because you woke up at 4:30 this morning to work out.
Funny how that works, right?
Yes.
All right. So Jesse, I know you've been excited to talk about this episode, this story, this two-parter.
I am.
And I can't wait to get your thoughts about it, and I also can't wait to get your thoughts, Tom.
Yeah.
And I hope you enjoyed this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did.
Is this one you guys watch on a regular basis, or is just this something you haven't watched for a while?
I don't think I've watched it since the first run-through,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually liked it much better the second time.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to, because there's so much to watch, I tend to not revisit things, but I remember revisiting this one, and I'm sure this will come up, because there is a scene that I wanted to see how seamless, pardon the pun,
Mm-hmm.
of the Doctor not being the Doctor in this timeline being in the show, right?
Right.
And I watched that knowing I still don't see. I mean, I understand why it is because I've already seen the future episode, but I didn't notice it then, and I didn't notice it. I didn't really notice it this time. It was good. It was good to see. I love River, and I had not remembered the guest cast, and I know you're going to talk about it in a minute, but that was kind of a pleasant surprise. Oh, that guy. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, this is one that my wife and I usually watch about maybe every year and a half. We just pull this one out because I really enjoy this one. Obviously, I know I'm kind of tipping my hand here early, but yeah, I think this is a very solid two-parter, and especially considering this was so early in Matt's run, to have this kind of story, I thought was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
You have the return of River Song, you have the return of the Weeping Angels, so Moffat coming hard right out of the gate for his first season. So, Tom, I was kind of wondering, since last time we talked to you, like I said, we previously talked to Lodger, and I know you've been doing Love and Capes, you've been doing your other projects, and so I was kind of curious before we get into our Doctor Who discussion, what you've been up to lately.
Well, mostly it's been fulfilling projects that I've been working on for a while. I finished the Long Con, which is a card game that I and Daniel Fregman created it's based on, in Warning Label, the lead character comes up with an idea for a card game where you create a convention and play against other conventions to be the best comic book convention.
Nice.
It took forever to get done, but those finally showed up on my door about a week ago, and I spent the time mailing everything out. But so far it's been pretty well received, and I'm glad to see them in people's hands. I'm glad to see them exist and have, mass and take physical form. Also, I'm running a big sale on my website for Love and Capes t-shirts, which I hadn't completely thought through because I'm cleaning out my attic. I have way too much stuff in there. It's like the TARDIS, except it doesn't get any bigger. So
it's
I had a
smaller
bunch
on
of
the
shirts
inside, right?
Yes. So I had a bunch of shirts from when I did Love and Capes, and it kind of didn't occur to me that I was doing Love and Capes again. So I started selling them all on the site for $5 each plus shipping, and I've sold like 40 or 50 of them so far, and that's
excellent.
That's just crazy. So
yeah, so obviously
that's nice.
It's now fresh again in everybody's thoughts.
Yes.
So perfect timing, right?
Yeah.
Time to
and I'm still doing
to break out that inventory stock.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, and the Love and Capes in the Time of COVID comic continues to be well received. It's been great and therapeutic to do it, to have characters living through this time. I'm trying to figure out how to end it because it's going much longer than I thought it would, but that's not a bad thing.
Kind of like COVID.
So I'm probably
pretty much.
Exactly. Yes. This is. I'm now in page 23 of my 15 days of comic book. So yeah, I'm working out how to do that as a print book. It'll probably be double size, and if conventions come back in the second half of this year, I should have it out for that.
Excellent. So we're all looking forward to that. And Jesse, I'm sure you want to chime in on this. I do. I hear you gasping in anticipation over there.
Yeah, Tom is, and I know he will pitch, at the end when we talk about it, has a Patreon, so you get the pages of the story, and it's been really interesting seeing this fictional world deal with the reality things, and there's stuff that there is a wonderful scene where the main character is frustrated in the grocery store, everyone wearing a mask wrong, and spoilers.
I'm pretty sure we can all identify with that.
He pulls a favor and he calls this world's version of the Flash to come and fix everyone's mask. And I told the story, and Linda said, I think that is hilarious. That is one of the funniest jokes Tom's ever written. Yeah, and so it's been great. And as I said before we recorded, I got a copy of the Long Con, and I'm reading the instructions, and I'm going, I need to figure out how to do this virtually, because I don't have enough comic book fans here in Dallas, but we have enough online that if we could figure out how to do this, let's say if I'm the dealer, then everyone else has okay, I've dealt out the cards, here they are, everyone pull those cards and do it. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's hilarious.
You could probably do it over Skype, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Have a little session, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and you could each have your own deck. It's built to, you can add decks together and make it bigger and bigger.
Okay. Yeah. This sounds really cool. I mean, I gotta check this out. So
and what's hilarious, right, is this was just
I think it's a great premise, by the way.
It's a subplot in his comic, and all of a sudden he made it reality on the Kickstarter. So it's really cool.
Well, there's sometimes, when you're creating one idea, you're getting inspired to do something else, or something else spins out of that idea. And I think that sounds like a great project.
Thanks. I never wanted to make a card game. I wanted to design a card game. And I had this idea, and then when I was doing Warning Label, I had to give Danielle an idea. So I gave her my idea, because that way it locked in, it became intellectual property and was out in the universe without me having to do it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know anything about finding a game designer, and my friend Laura Innes knew one, and that's how I got hooked up with Danielle, and that's what let me put the game together, because the math and the mechanics would have been a little beyond me. The one rule I did insist on is, how a lot of card games have wacky rules for who goes first? Mm-hmm. My game has tallest player goes first.
Couldn't be, because you might have a couple of inches on most people.
I am completely average sized for my people.
So basically what you're saying is I'm going to be at a disadvantage being only 5'7". Okay, I see how it is. I see how it is, but that's all right. I'm up to a challenge. I can deal with that.
Yes.
All right. I'm not intimidated. Okay. Yeah, we're going to do our shameless plugs at the very end.
Okay.
But if you want to just really quickly tell people where they can find it, and then you can always remind them later.
Sure.
Once again.
You can find it at thomz.com, THOMZ.com. There's a section called Thom Zahler Store, and that's where everything is.
And I definitely encourage everybody to go check that out because that sounds like a very cool game.
Thanks.
And I want to learn more about this, so I'm gonna do some digging on this myself.
And one of the nice things, and then I'll quit plugging, but I just thought this was cool. Tom reached out to all his friends, and instead of drawing all the art himself, he reached out to other artists and says, "Hey, do you want to help draw?" So there's, all the cards have a unique art from different artists.
Nice contributions from other artists. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any names you want to drop?
I want to apologize for Joe Staten because his card didn't make it in, but he's on the box art. Craig Rousseau from DC Comics, Zumi Nori, who's be part of The Line is Drawn, who sadly passed away, and I'm glad that I get to put more of his art in the world. Laura Innes, who does The Dreamer. Those are the names I can think of right now because I feel like I'm on the spot. My friend Luke Dobb did a bunch. Yeah, there's just great ones all over the place.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been a big fan of Joe Staten since all the way back for E-Man when he was when Joe Staten's E-Man in First Comics all the way back in the 80s. So and then that got me into his Plastic Man run in Adventure Comics and other things. So yeah, big fan of his.
And he's a great guy too.
That's awesome. All right, ready to talk some Who, guys? All right.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. All right, so this was, of course, written by Stephen Moffat, who is the showrunner at this point in the new Who's era. Directed by Adam Smith, who directed the 11th Hour, Matt Smith's first episode. But it's kind of interesting, and then one of the things I want to talk about in trivia is that the 11th Hour was not Matt's first episode. That was filmed. This is the 4th and 5th episodes from Series 5 in 2010, starring, of course, Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor and Karen Gillan as Amy Pond, who is, this is obviously very early in Matt's run, and we'll talk about Amy. We have to talk about Amy because at the very end of the story, she's all over the Doctor like a cheap suit. And I'm sure Tom, being something of an aficionado of romantic comedies, rom-coms, might have a few thoughts on that sequence. We'll talk about that, of course. And this was, of course, guest starring Alex Kingston returning as River Song after her spectacular debut during the David Tennant era in Silence of the Library, Forest of the Dead, back in Series 4, I believe. And then we have Ian Glenn, who plays Father Octavian, who's notable, of course, to Game of Thrones fans because he plays Ser Jorah Mormont on Game of Thrones, and currently he's playing Bruce Wayne on Titans. So, which Jesse and I talk about, of course, on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. We'll probably get to talk about, hopefully, again, whenever Series 3 finally makes its debut on HBO Max. So, looking forward to that. He's also been on episodes of Downton Abbey, and he was in, believe it or not, the first Lara Croft movie, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, the one that starred Angelina Jolie. So, I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, we had a bunch of clerics, but probably the most notable was David Atkins, who plays Bob, who meets a rather unfortunate end at the hands of the Weeping Angels. Literally at the hands of the Weeping Angels. If you're wondering about where this story fits on the River Song timeline, I thought I'd mention this. It's set between the Pandorica opens the Big Bang, because if you remember, River says that the next time he'll see her, the Doctor will see her, is when the Pandorica opens. So that's essentially River's past. And then the next time after this one there's a scene at the end of the Wedding of River Song, where River shows up in those church fatigues, and this is where River tells Amy that the Doctor is still alive, because remember, at this point she thought the Doctor was dead, and that, oh, by the way, you're his mother-in-law now. So just the idea of Amy finding out that the Doctor is her son-in-law, I'm sure, made her laugh uncontrollably.
Yes.
And I'm kind of mad that we never got to see that kind of a reaction from her when she found out, because I think she would have laughed hysterically at that. All right, trivia. So just some real quick things I wanted to mention. The Time of Angels was the first episode of the series to be produced. So, now, like I said, not the 11th Hour. So this story was Matt's debut as the Doctor, interestingly enough. And his first scene was actually where, they're kind of standing on what is, essentially it's a beach in real life, but it's supposed to be the surface of the planet Alphalva Metraxis. and when they're arriving following up on the crash of the Byzantium. So that was essentially Matt's first day, and also Karen Gillan's first day, I believe, on Doctor Who. Now, executive producer Piers Wenger thought that the Delirium Archive, the museum that the Doctor and Amy visit at the beginning of the story, it needed to be explained. So Moffat, in a very hurried text to Piers Wenger said, "Oh, this is the final resting place of the headless monks." Well, who are the headless monks? Well, at this point, we don't know. But, of course, Moffat being Moffat, reintroduced them, or actually introduced them for the first time in that mid-series from Series 6 finale, Good Man Goes to War, which we've talked about. And that's also the next time that we kind of pick up with the Church of the Papal Mainframe, who gets introduced in this story.
Yeah.
So, and lastly, well, actually, I got a couple of more things. Alex Kingston did not expect to return as River Song, but she stated that Moffat always intended that she would be coming back. And Moffat was apparently influenced by Audrey Niffenegger's novel, The Time Traveler's Wife, in which a woman falls in love with a time traveler who moves unintentionally through time. So that's kind of what inspired him to create that character.
I've never read that book. I keep meaning to pick it up and read it. So
yeah, it's one of those I haven't read either. I've heard great things about it. I know there's a lot of fans about it.
Yeah.
Fans for it, but I've never read it myself, so I can't really say one way or the other. And lastly, in the script, it wasn't written that River wouldn't land on the Doctor when she first arrives in the TARDIS, during that great opening sequence where, she blows herself out of an airlock and then, gets picked up by the TARDIS doors open, and she falls in on Matt Smith. Apparently that was actually Matt's idea after they'd had some trouble with the rehearsals of that scene. They thought that was a better way to handle it. So
good.
Yeah. And I think it worked. I think it worked better. So I think it's interesting that, Matt, for being his first story, already contributing things like that. So it just shows you this kind of the talent this guy has as an actor, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody else has any trivia you'd like to share about the story, but
no, I'm good.
Please speak now or forever hold your peace, I guess.
Nope.
All right, so let's dive into our main topics. So topic number 1, and I want to call this Hello, Sweetie. And this is, of course, let's talk about the 11th Doctor, Amy Pond, and the return of River Song. And obviously this is River's first appearance since we last saw her, like I said, during the Tennant era. And it's very interesting for the Doctor, I think, because I think maybe the Doctor didn't expect to see River ever again. And here she is, on this, after leaving this 12,000-year-old message for him in this museum to essentially go back in time and rescue her in a very elaborate escape from the Byzantium before it crashes. And I want to get everybody's thoughts. So, Tom, since you're a special guest companion this time, why don't you share your thoughts about what you thought about River's return, and also Matt and Karen portraying the 11th Doctor and Amy this early in their run.
I love seeing Alex Kingston back. I was a fan of hers on ER. I think she does an incredible job, and she does a massive amount of work because I don't think Matt Smith had found his groove yet. Now, I didn't realize this was his first episode. And right. I think that shows not so much in his general Doctor Who performance, but I don't think Matt Smith had the gravitas of David Tennant. Like David Tennant could do super funny, and then he could hit that super somber I'm all alone in the world note in a way that Matt Smith, who's playing a different Doctor, who, as Jesse once told me, has already gone through not bringing back the Time Lords, so he's in a different place. But I think that later on Matt Smith might have been able to, and I think part of the problem with this is how big the buildup is to the final scene where he delivers the line, what do you never put in a trap? Me. And I don't think he sticks that landing. And it's really built up, and that's a lot of pressure to put on him for his first episode because it doesn't, I think because it ends on that note, it's got to be perfect. If there were a couple moments after that, if you saw them escape after that, it might work a little better, but you were looking for something that had all the weight of "I'm coming for you" when Christopher Eccleston is going after Billy Piper. I wanted that, and I wasn't quite getting that. I think Karen Gillan.
So you weren't sold on that one.
I wasn't sold on that one. I like him throughout the episode, but that one moment he needed to be a little bit bigger than he was, and I think that later on in the run he probably would have been able to do it. But hitting that huge hero moment, it's not that it was bad. It just wasn't all the way where it needed to be.
Do you think it would have worked better had it been in, say, Series 6 or Series 7?
It would have worked better there, and honestly, I think it would have worked better if it was an act before. I think ending on that line, on that moment, that's a lot to ask. I mean, that's your dramatic finale, where if something had followed that, if you had had another 5 minutes of story, it would have been a dramatic moment in a big scene rather than the pivotal end of a big scene that you're thinking about for an entire week.
I agree with you. I thought it was kind of a weak finale or weak cliffhanger to end on. Any other thoughts?
Look, I'm totally partial to Karen Gillan. I'm gonna get my priors out right there. But I think she does a really good job out of the gate, and weirdly, I think she has more chemistry with Alex Kingston than she does Matt Smith. And it's not that, again, we're talking about a game of inches. Like, they're all delivering really good performances, but the way that she reacts and laughs with and makes fun of everything that's going on with the Doctor being with his wife, even though they don't know it's his wife, that has an almost history to it that some of the other things don't. And I know that at this point, Matt or the Doctor and Amy don't have a ton of history, but I think I had this theory about Terry Hatcher that she makes anyone she's with better. Because those commercials she did with Howie Long for Radio Shack were just deliriously charming. And kind of the same way, I think Alex Kingston brings up your game and makes you better. Because she does it with Matt Smith. I don't know that she does it with Peter Capaldi, because Peter Capaldi starts at awesome and only gets better from there. But the two of them are just magnetic. I know the one thing I always wish there had been is I wish there had been one more David Tennant River Song episode, because I would have liked to have seen them encounter each other just one more time before switching.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there was originally they wanted to do that, but if I recall correctly, that because David wouldn't commit to that a Series 5. That he only agreed to do those specials, that they basically changed those plans initially. I think whatever maybe this story perhaps would have been a David Tennant story had David wanted to do that full final season.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see that really well. Yeah.
How about you, Jesse? What are your thoughts on these characters?
So, it was one of interesting, and now that I'm doing revisionist viewing, there are a few times where the Doctor is losing his temper. Like when he's like, I'm trying to do this. And I'm like, that seems a little odd for the Doctor to be that upset and that mad. Now that you tell me this was the first time he's playing the Doctor, then I go, oh, maybe he's still trying to find his range, Yeah. I do love watching this, knowing that I know that River knows this is her mother.
Yes.
But she doesn't know, but Karen does, Amy doesn't know that. And the interactions between that is really fun to watch.
Right. And you also kind of have to put it out of your mind, because after watching all those episodes after this, you kind of have to remember, keeping in perspective that at this point, Amy didn't know this, that River was her daughter, and we didn't know this as the audience.
Exactly. And that's why I'm really glad you brought up where this is located, because I was thinking, in fact, that's one of the first statements when we started the call. I said, I love this, but I've got to remember, how much am I supposed to know about River and how much am I not supposed to know about River? And there is a great satisfaction to see, the father talk about, well, does he know what this is? And when he talks about, she killed a man, a good man, and this, we know, well, what happens, but, they don't. And playing that is really good. You know, I love Matt Smith, the Doctor, and Amy. I agree with you at the end. It's a little weird that, she's having this, God. And I was reading, I guess, that that's one of the few things Moffat says that he wished they had not played that for comedy. I just think it was.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
Really.
I think she's infatuated with the Doctor. We later learn how much she adores Rory and how they are an epic couple, right? And, and even gone to, when we go forward, the sacrifice they make to be together.
Apparently not that epic if she was willing to sleep with the Doctor the night before her wedding.
Go ahead, please.
I don't like that scene either. I remember it being a turnoff when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
One, because after Rose Tyler and Martha, I didn't want to see another companion in love with the Doctor, and we totally got that in Donna, but I just wanted to see that continue. But there's a...
As a classic fan, I'm right there with you because, we went through a lot of seasons where we didn't have the companion fawning over the Doctor, and I think it works a lot better. Yeah, and it was original when it happened with Rose. I didn't like that was almost like a default pathway. And on top of that, so this is writer Tom talking. When I was writing 11 Capes, it was funny to have the Amazonia character try to come between Mark and Abby when they were dating. But once they got engaged, I had to change the story because it's not funny to try to break up a marriage. It's kind of funny to try to break up a relationship. You see that happen on Friends and all sorts of sitcoms because you can make the justification that they're not right for each other and they don't know. And kind of the same way, I don't like Amy on the night before her wedding, falling apart with her commitment to Rory. I can get the adrenaline. She completely forgets about Rory almost.
Yeah, and he doesn't. It's not giving him his due. It almost feels like she's marrying him out of inertia at that point, and not because she wants to, and that really sabotages the relationship. You need Amy to be completely in love with Rory, and us to eventually see why she's right to make that work. And I understand what they were trying to do. Maybe if it had been more dramatic, it would have worked. But it's just one of those, just because you can do a thing does not mean you should do a things. Mm-hmm. There are other. You could have had them kiss and then react to it completely differently, rather than dwell on it the way they did. And when the Doctor pushes back, she should not push back again, or she should not try to barrel through at that point.
Right.
Do you think, and I'd love both of you guys to give me your thoughts on this, do you think that when we go through the rest of the season where Roy is gone, she can't remember him, and then when she comes back, do you think ultimately she earns that respect that he is her epic love tale? In other words, is there enough of a payoff that we kind of forgive her at this point? She had to go through that journey.
That might have been Moffat's intention, possibly, because maybe at this point, in this story, Amy didn't really love Rory as much as she thought she did. And so consequently, when she's presented with, let's face it, her childhood fantasy. Right there in this moment, her hormones kick in and she wants to take advantage of that moment. So maybe Moffat was thinking, well, later on, it's okay to have this moment because later on I'm going to bring Rory in and then make him disappear so that, it creates this absence in Amy's life. And then where she's really going to realize that, yes, she loves Rory, not the Doctor. And that's why it's going to pay off at the end when the wedding comes around in the Pandorica Opens, the Big Bang. Now, my take on it personally, though, I don't think this scene was needed at all. I think, it was fine for the Doctor being completely oblivious because that makes sense, okay? He doesn't, he's not dialed in like that. It's not his nature. So, and especially, with Matt playing as this, for laughs in this kind of cluelessness that the Doctor has. that I think works for me. But Amy just continuing to throw herself at the Doctor after being initially rebuffed. So I kind of agree with Tom here that I think that's the problem, is that she wasn't taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
Let's face it, Amy, like no means no, okay?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I because of this type of scene, I didn't think Rory was going to marry Amy, period. Like when he disappeared, I thought he was gone.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they never revisited this moment, because it's one of those mistakes that you can't, if you dwell on it too much, you're just going to draw too much attention to it. So let's move on and not kind of ignore that happened. But
let us never speak of this moment ever again.
Yes. But a lot of the epic between Amy and Rory is done by Rory. When Rory shows up as a Centurion at the end of the season, that's the moment where I realized what a relationship they were, because he stayed around and guarded her for 200 years or whatever it was, and that was
2000.
That was the epic aspect to their relationship, and Rory was the one who carried it.
Yeah, it is. I always got this impression. I know we're getting ahead because Rory's not here yet, but I always felt that Rory loved Amy a little bit more than Amy loved Rory.
Yeah, I think that's a true statement, though I do think later we get the payoff where she's talking to the baby, right? And talking about,
Melody.
there is a man, and where she talks about you feel
like
that
your father is coming for you.
Yes, your father is coming for you.
Yeah, that's a great speech.
Yeah, and I do think that she didn't know what she had till it was taken away from her, and then it's gone, and then it is. And I think, Charles, you're perfect, and I know we can move on, but
well, I thank you, Jesse. I appreciate the compliment.
No, I think this is perfect.
Now tell my wife
this is your childhood fantasy.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I've been married over 35 years. Terry Hatcher shows up at the front door. I'm like, okay, can I get a kiss at least, Linda? I mean, this is Terry freaking Hatcher, right? So, someone that I've adored.
So is Terry Hatcher your freebie with Linda?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if we've ever written that out. So yes, but she would be on the list.
You might want to check with her first. I'm just saying.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we would. Right. She would be on the list.
This should be a conversation. I'm thinking.
Okay, very nice.
All right. Okay, so the 11th Doctor and River, they're pairing with each other. For me, I agree with you, Tom. I think that Alex Kingston makes everybody better just by being, or having her on the set. But I really like their chemistry. And, it's a little weird because Matt is so young compared to Alex, being younger than David. So it's a little more awkward. But surprisingly, the chemistry is at this point is there's sparks here. I mean, they give great banter back and forth, and even like I said, being Matt's first story, film, produced story, that I think that comes through, as far as I'm concerned. At least it does.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I really enjoy is the Doctor's a little bit out of his league. Like he's one of the things I've always talked about, and you and I have discussed this topic, that Matt Smith plays the Doctor as if he's having a conversation that's 2 or 3 sentences ahead of the current conversation, and that's why he sometimes thinks he's not. He's behind where River is. He's playing catch up, and he's trying to almost
different.
Almost in a game of I can be more clever than you. Can I be more clever than you? And he's like, wait a minute, I'll come up with something in a minute. And it's played very well. They have beautiful chemistry. And I every time I see this, I go, it is when we go to Silence of the Library and River is talking about her doctor, Is she talking about Matt Smith, or is she talking about Peter Capaldi's Doctor? I always have that question in my mind because, as you talked about, Tom, Capaldi and her were just epic together. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
two acting and the gravitas of that, knowing that this is officially kind of the end of the River Song story, though we know we've already seen, but is really perfect. And I love seeing this flirting and everything, and she's so good at, like, I could kiss you. Well, maybe when you're older. So.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree with Tom that as sad as it is that we didn't get another David Tennant Alex Kingston story, where with the 10th Doctor and River, it kind of bothers me, not really bothers, but it just disappoints me that we didn't get another 12th Doctor and River. That we didn't get to see her with Capaldi. I mean, although the Husbands of River Song, especially that final sequence in the restaurant, looking over the towers are just incredible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But
I would finance, if I was the BBC, a 2-hour movie of just them two. One of their, an adventure
Right.
they have. That would be greatness.
I would cast him in anything, and I think Matt Smith benefits from a script that, like, the difficulty of Peter Capaldi's performance is that he has to have chemistry with this actress that he really hasn't worked with, and it takes a lot to do that. David Tennant does it with Elizabeth Sladen.
Yeah.
Yes. It's amazing.
Smith.
Yeah. When the two of them get together. But this script mostly calls on Matt Smith to be exasperated. He doesn't have to play against a relationship. He has to play, like Jesse was saying, he has to play catch up. And that's such a lovely place to put the Doctor, and it gives him so much that he can work with so that he can build up to everything else he's going to have to do.
Yeah. As a classic Who fan, I kind of see the 11th Doctor and River almost like the 4th Doctor and Romana back in the day, because Romana was another fellow Time Lord, and a lot of times knows more than the Doctor does. Knows how to pilot the TARDIS better. Knows how essentially, she's essentially better at being the Doctor than the Doctor is, and so that tends to put the Doctor on his heels. At least it did a little bit with Tom Baker, which is saying a lot considering the kind of on-set ego that Tom Baker had back in the day. But I think it's captured a lot with the Doctor and River in the modern era, because River's again, she's right out of the gate in this one, telling the Doctor how to pilot the TARDIS, that she knows how to pilot it better. I can do this better than you can, and you leave the brake on. And all that. And so the Doctor just is, like you said, he's playing catch. He's thrown off his heels a little bit because he's used to, like Jesse likes to say, being the smartest one in the room. And with River there, she's constantly challenging him. And I think that's why, that dynamic works so well, because the Doctor with River seems much more believable to me than the Doctor with, say, someone like Rose. Because River has the ability to challenge the Doctor. She's more of his equal, his peer. And so for my money, that makes it a much more believable romance.
Yeah, I totally agree, Charles.
Yeah.
And it is so funny, and I'm sure this will be on one of our quotes, right, where he is so disappointed that it doesn't make the sound, right? Like, he is like a little kid. Oh, the bell didn't ring, so yes.
Yeah. I can't do it too much, otherwise, my asthma will kick in, and then I'll be in big trouble and have to take an inhaler, I guess.
Okay.
So I better not do that.
No, don't do that.
But yeah, I just I just love those two together. Is there anything else about these characters we want to talk about? I know there's some great interaction with the 11th Doctor and Amy when he's trying to talk to her and trying to convince her about your hand isn't turning into stone. That's just their weeping angels messing with your head. And I thought that was a great sequence, and a little bit of foreshadowing to the Big Bang, because we get that little bit where Amy, being not having her eyes closed, not being able to see, thinks she's talking to the doctor from, this present time, when in fact it's actually a future doctor that's kind of traveling back through time, through his own past.
Mm-hmm.
And and you can see little hints, because at the time there was a lot of speculation where fans were pointing out, well, the doctor in that scene was wearing a jacket, but remember the present time doctor wasn't wearing a jacket because it had been taken by one of the weeping angels. So everybody was wondering, well, was that just a production error? But in fact, it turned out to be intentional, and I thought it was pretty clever.
Yeah, I missed that entirely. But when I saw that scene, I had forgotten that. I'd forgotten the going back and how well that had been set up. And I'm amazed at how well it works. But then when you know it's different, you totally see how it's different. But it didn't jump out at me as that kind of thing when we watched it. It's really subtly laid.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that, when you watch that story for the first time, you didn't really think anything of it. You just appreciated that scene for being what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then, after the Big Bang, it puts another layer on that, so that when you go back and rewatch it, it brings a little added dimension, a little nuance to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as I said, I watched,
and that's really good writing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I specifically was looking for that because I knew that this was, and it was hard for me to catch it because it's subtle, and it, and it is, though, once you know it, you're like, oh yeah, he's kind of got his jacket on, but it was really well done. And there is often, we can talk about sometimes Moffat can be too clever for himself, but when this early years, he's at the top of his game writing, for the series, I think.
Yeah, he's basically dialed in. He's finally getting to write the stories he always wanted to write for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is very clearly a backlog of ideas that he had in his mind for a long time. Once he burns through these, I felt like he's chasing this puzzle box for a while, and he kind of goes to the same well one too many times. But for the first time out of the gate, it's really well done, and he takes advantage of knowing that they have a season to work with and exactly what they have to do. He treats it like a TV show in a way that it hadn't been treated before.
Yeah. Essentially, it's like one season-long story,
mm-hmm.
broken up into chapters. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, anything else about this topic?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Topic number 2. Let's talk. Well, we talked Hello, Sweetie. So this is a topic I wanted to call Hi, Father, which is a little nod to you Jack Kirby fans.
Yes.
So if you catch that reference, if you're a New Gods fan. So let's talk Father Octavian, and we can maybe talk the Church of the Papal Mainframe if you want, just because this is essentially the introduction of that concept that Moffat just has as a plot device, but only doesn't really do much with. We don't really get to see these guys again until A Good Man Goes to War in the following season. So then finally again in Matt's final story, The Time of the Doctor, where we see how the church has evolved. But this is essentially the introduction, and Father Octavian, as we are introduced to him, is a pretty interesting character, and even the Doctor, when during their final scene together, the Doctor makes this great comment like, I wish I'd known you better. And consequently, you kind of, I think as the audience, at least speaking at least for me, I kind of do. I kind of wish this character had been around a little longer, because I think he was a character with a lot of potential. And Ian Glenn, it's a tribute to Ian Glenn that character resonated, I think. So I want to get everybody's thoughts. So Jesse, I'll start with you first on this.
Yeah, I agree. And that great line where he says, well, I think you've seen me at my best, or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, you could absolutely see Father Octavian as kind of a modern brigadier general, right? That we often see this guy.
Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart.
Yeah, that, coming in, that you see him. Ian Glenn is amazing. You're right. We loved him as Batman and the Titans, both the imaginary Batman and the real one. And in Game of Thrones, he's someone that you pulled for so much. And this guy
occasionally hated.
Yes,
a little
that's
bit,
true.
but
yeah.
But for the most part, you rooted for him.
And the idea that we know more than the characters know, so we know what he's talking about when he's warning River. We know when he's talking to the doctor about what she's done and delivering that. He pops the bubble like, oh, River's like, oh, we're engaged or so, kind of flirts. He's like, yeah. She's out of prison. I'm her, guard and stuff. I liked him a lot. I thought it was a really, you want to talk about a role that he really sold. You pulled for him. You liked him, and you considering how few big roles are in this two-parter. You needed someone big to carry a lot of the weight along with our three leads, and he stood up and did great.
Yeah, I think in this role, go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
He brings this real quiet dignity to all the roles that he has, or all the roles that I've seen him in, and I like that both in the way he's written and the way he's performed, is that he's playing a smart military man. And I think there's a tendency, like especially in that one Peter Capaldi season, where they start writing military officers off a little too much. Like the Doctor has a bad experience with military, and it's nice to see one. The military in this episode they're not a hindrance. They're not acting foolishly. They're not causing things to happen for the sake of plot. They're quietly competent and trying to do the thing that they're doing, and Ian Glenn is perfect in that role. Like, not since you wouldn't have seen the other roles that he was in, this is exactly the kind of role I would put him in, having seen the other roles that he's in. He's absolutely perfect in it.
Yeah, he is, and I like the fact that he's not just because of the way this character was created by Moffat, that it's not just a military officer. He's a military officer / priest, essentially. That he's a military officer with a spiritual side, and that comes through. He has a very I don't want to say. I guess probably the best comparison I could say is maybe. He has a very serene but also a little bit Zen-like attitude about everything, and yeah, he gets a little uppity when it comes to River, when he's kind of dangling this threat of telling the Doctor over her head, but he's essentially, I think he's just trying to use this as leverage to make sure this task gets done. I don't think it's toward any real animosity toward her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it just seems like that he's kind of like, well, you could do the carrot or the stick, and I guess with River you kind of need a little bit of the stick sometimes.
And I don't know if we get enough of a payoff, because this is a really interesting concept of the military clergy. And we don't, as you mentioned, we only see this another 2 or 3 times.
I would have wasted potential. Really,
well said. Yeah, I think it was definitely wasted potential.
Yeah, it felt very like heavy metal European sci-fi, where you marry the church with either the government or the military. Like it was one of those same things that seemed like an interesting concept, but also like weirdly I was okay not revisiting too much, because I don't know that there's a hugely interesting can't be, but I'm okay with just seeing the important part and going on from there, and it builds out like a rich universe where not everything needs to be explored.
Okay, so you really didn't see the need to develop them further.
No. Like I know they appeared later, but I'd be hard pressed to tell you exactly what more I really learned about them in their further appearances. Right. It feels like they're just it's in as much as Ian Glenn is a guest star, I felt like they feel like a guest star for almost from another TV show, but it gave them such a sense of, it makes the universe feel so lived in to find something that has existed before and will continue existing without you. That I thought that was lovely. It's it's kind of like that opening scene in the third Indiana Jones film where Indy has the most influential 15 minutes of anyone's life, where he learns about the whip and the snakes in the hat, and kind of the same. Like I don't need an explanation for everything. Like the other Harrison Ford thing, like I didn't need a reason why he was called Han Solo. Like that could have just been his name. I mean, Skywalker was a name in this world. Solo is fine too.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I don't like, if there's a great story, I would be willing to see it, but I don't need to see everything that we encounter in Doctor Who explored to the nth degree. I'm willing to have things just exist and enrich the world.
Okay, that makes sense. You don't
like
need
that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, leave something up to gotta leave something for fan fiction, right? To deal with. So it doesn't need to be, everything doesn't need to be laid out and explained. I agree. All right. Octavian, I thought was just a really interesting character. I just know if anybody has any other thoughts they want to share about this character. I liked his relationship with the Doctor. That especially that final scene where they kind of, the Doctor realizes that Octavian's pretty much dead. There's no real way out of the situation, at least not right away, for the sake of time. So, but they have a very frank final scene together, and this is, I think, a credit to Octavian, that he calmly accepts his fate. He doesn't whine about it. He's not angry about it. He just accepts it for what it is. And like you said, Jesse, that I think he appreciated that he got to show the Doctor him at his best. That this is the ideal person that I want to be, and I'm glad you in this final moments got to see that.
And I think another thing, when you consider that this is one of the first losses that Smith has had to play as the Doctor, he handles it very well and shows that of all the pain of how many people the Doctor has lost over the years. So I think that was well done.
Yeah, and it's also a character. It's also a character letting the Doctor off the hook. Yeah. Like he's not asking to be saved. He's not begging for his life. He's quietly accepting his fate, and that makes it like he's willing to. The Doctor is the kind of character who would struggle to figure out a way to save him, and I like that for the good of everyone. He kind of says, "Yeah, it's okay. Like you have other stuff to do. We are where we are, and we go from here."
Yeah, he's like, "I got checkmated by the Weeping Angels. It's okay. I get it. You have to go, stop this whole thing from happening and save everybody. So go do your thing. I'll die, and we'll call it quits, I guess." Very matter-of-factly. All right, topic number 3. Hello, Angels. So obviously I'm a big Charlie's Angels fan from back in the day, so that's what kind of inspired me. And that line actually gets referenced by the Doctor when he talks to Angel Bob on that communicator. So I couldn't resist. So let's talk, since speaking of Angel Bob, we could talk Angel Bob here. Let's talk the Weeping Angels, who are returning for the first time since Blink. And let's talk about that pesky crack in time, which, gosh darn it, just meshes everything up for everybody, even if they don't remember it, because they get erased from existence if they go into it or stand too close to it. So Tom, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts about the return of the Weeping Angels, and also what the Doctor confronting once again the crack in time that he remembers from Amy's bedroom?
So watching it with hindsight, I liked the crack in time. I don't know how much of it I got the first time through, because you're not completely aware of what's happening. I mean, this is, as far as I recall, the episode that kind of fleshes out exactly kind of what the threat is, so that when Rory encounters it, you know what the stakes are, because you see it wiping people out, people forgetting them. And I like the the hand wavy solution that you're a time traveler, like you see things differently now. I think that that does a lot of moving the furniture so that you can keep the story going, which is really good. As far as having the Angels back, though, I'm disappointed in their second appearance. I'm also not a huge fan of their third appearance because I thought they were such a beautifully simple villain. They're sending people back in time. It was such like a perfect concept that this one winds up watering it down because they're not sending people back in time. And watching it this time through, I appreciated it more. I thought they did more to make them work, but I thought they were just so perfectly executed in Blink that I almost never needed to see them again because it continues to complicate that. Like they touch you and they send you back in time and they steal your chronal energy or whatever the thing was. Yeah. I think is a great concept, but when they start becoming more strategic and doing things to make the Doctor angry, which if you're Matt Smith and this is your first episode and you see that your character is being written as someone who can become angry, I understand why you play him that way a little bit more. But you get a character like it almost becomes sequelitis. Like in Blink, there are roughly speaking 4 of them. Here, it's not just 4. Like there's an entire army of them. Like how many did you think you could take? Now there's even more, and it gets bigger and bigger, and they have to power them down and make them work in ways that seem overly complicated for such a beautifully simple foe.
Okay, that's I see your point. I think you got some valid points there because I think if I'm taking your reasoning here that you kind of regret that you thought they were essentially this unique, elegant thing, and so bringing them back dilutes that a little bit. That it takes away from that specialness that we had in Blink. That like here's this perfect monster for this perfect story, and bringing them back just kind of takes away a little bit from that uniqueness.
Yeah, they're so pure in intent and execution in Blink that when you see them in this episode and then they have to have strategies and different goals and different ways of handling things. And I honestly thought that anything that sees the angel becomes the angel. Like that's a little, I don't know. It starts
nebulous.
It's nebulous and it starts like really complicating the canon. Like what I love is that they
we notice that hasn't really been referenced ever since the story.
Yeah, like they were like in pure comic book speak, they were the best they were at what they do, but what they do wasn't always very nice. But it was that one thing. And I
appreciate the Wolverine.
When you
reference. That's good.
When you have to flesh them out and make them a different kind of threat, it takes away from that. It works in terms of the story, but I don't. And it's nice to see the Doctor run into a foe that he's afraid of. One of the reasons I love the first Dalek episode is you get to see Christopher Eccleston scared. And I love his big speech about, how many people are in the town, all dead, that one. So it's nice to see him run into somebody who makes him afraid. And just, like, I almost think that mechanics of it aside, if you had made this any other alien, like you could have done the Cybermen, you could have done the Daleks because they're just used so much. But if you made it any other recurring race, I think you still kind of have the same story. I don't know that you need these characters to be the bad guys.
Yeah. Well, Jesse, I'm guessing that since you're a New Who fan, that you probably appreciate the Weeping Angels because essentially they proved so popular in Blink that it was almost like, the modern Who's version of the Daleks. That, in the classic era, the Daleks kind of captured everybody's imaginations, and so they kept bringing them back. So do you kind of see that maybe with the Weeping Angels that everybody just loving those characters and wanting to see them come back, that's the reason that we get to see them here?
So I'm so glad that Tom went first, because that's almost, I remember my feeling watching this the first time
Yeah.
is going, well, that isn't what the Weeping Angels are. Wait a minute. This seems like what they're in her eye. Like,
Yeah.
now, true.
Some cool new tricks, but
It's very cool, and I do think it is nice her doing the countdown that you don't notice at first, and then with the rewatch you get to see that. That's a very slick, and you wonder sometimes, as Ron Moore will talk about, like when he was doing Battlestar Galactica, when he did that behind the scenes podcast, like sometimes they did something just because they thought it would look cool, whether it fit the story or narrative, anything. We're just doing this, and I always appreciate his honesty. So watching this the second time, I liked, or this is probably the third, but watching it this week, I enjoyed the story more because I went in knowing that the Angels are going to be a little different. They are not what I thought they would be.
right.
And I thought that Tom put it really well, that, they're really, they don't have a wide range. It's as Tom talked about William Shatner's acting ability, right? He doesn't have that long. He has a very narrow hitting range, but when
Limited
you pitch
range.
that pitch in there, it's going to be out the park. And as we're recording this, he hit 90 this week, so live long and prosper, and Denny Crane.
Yeah.
So I love seeing this, and I do like Angel Bob. I like the discussions they had, and I thought it was a clever, the whole gravity and the story, and then the Doctor thinking of, oh, they've forgotten what we're doing, and it's a very unique solution how he saves the day. But yeah, I would have. I don't know. You and I have talked about this, Charles. I sometimes okay, we're the Daleks again. Right? Can we have a really good story to bring them back, or are we just going to bring them back? And I don't know if this. Looking back, I had a great time and I enjoyed this episode, and it will show in my rating. But I can't disagree what Tom said, and your thoughts too, right? That this is maybe we should have saved this for a little, or kept the storyline where it was supposed to be.
Well, I mean, obviously you needed a monster, and I think the whole point was just, hey, Moffat was probably thinking, I'm guessing, that, well, we're bringing back River, let's throw in the Weeping Angels, and let's see what else I can do with these characters.
Yeah.
And how else we can make them interesting, because I'm guessing that Moffat was getting some, after Blink especially, he probably got a lot of feedback and says, hey, what about the Weeping Angels with this and this? Why don't you try this idea? Or, there's a bit in the story where Amy does the back and forth with one eye, trying to keep an eye on the Weeping Angels so that they can't move, be quantum locked. So, and I'm sure that was a reference because Moffat getting a lot of feedback probably from Blink, because a lot of fans at the time, I think they had questions about, well, why doesn't Sally Sparrow just, hold, one eye closed and one eye open so that, her eyes wouldn't dry out staring at the Weeping Angels.
Yeah.
So I think this is maybe Moffat's way of kind of addressing some of those, because he is a fan himself. So he probably knows what those fan expectations are, and probably wanted to kind of address some of that, and also give Matt a good strong villain for that fans would recognize.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing. But for my money, I like the fact that they have some new tricks. I like the fact that he didn't just go back to the exact same, jump scares with the Weeping Angels. That they are a little bit more Machiavellian. I kind of like that. The fact that and this is probably, the only time I think we really see this, is that they take control of Bob, and, after killing him, and use his voice so that they can communicate, because we never really get to hear them communicate again from this point on. So in that way, I think maybe it's a little special, because that idea wasn't, recycled perhaps, or maybe it wasn't well received. I don't know, but it does make at least this appearance of the Weeping Angels a little more unique, because you don't really see these tricks in other stories. even when Moffat brings them back for stories like, say, The Angels Take Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciated that. And then the Crack in Time, obviously this is the big Series 5 MacGuffin that goes through the entire season. This is one of the main story ideas that just echoes through all the episodes. And so we get a little bit more of this mystery. I remember when I watched this for the first time, I thought that was interesting, and I liked the idea that the Doctor kind of used the Crack in Time as the way to deal with the Weeping Angel's threat, because it very neatly addressed the situation of the angel being inside Amy's eye. That there was no real way to get that angel out of her, but the simple fact of like, well, hey, if we erase these Weeping Angels from existence, that means that never happened.
Mm-hmm.
But consequently, you think it would also affect Amy, but that's addressed by the line that, well, you're a time traveler, so therefore that's why you remember it, even though essentially it never happened.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their memories are different than their physicality. Like
Yeah.
the angel's imprint on her eye, because it's actually light on her eye. When that never happened, she still remembers it happening, but it doesn't affect her the same way.
No, because it exists now only in Amy's memory that is isolated because she's a time traveler.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't affected by the change in the timeline.
Yeah,
So.
and this is a jump from why am I going blank on the first showrunner? Russell T Davies.
Yes.
It's a jump from him where we saw Bedwolf all over the place, and you could pick up on it or not, because I completely admit I didn't pick up on it.
Right.
I caught it by the time it started was Vote Saxon. But this is the first time that the thing you keep seeing in the background jumps into the foreground, and you realize, oh, this isn't just going to be the thing that keeps showing up. This is actually going to be a plot point.
Yeah. And Tom, you mentioned this earlier, that essentially it's used as a way to establish that anything that goes into it is erased from existence, from time.
Mm-hmm.
So consequently, we know that gets paid off later when Rory gets dragged into it in the two-parter with the Silurians. And so that consequently Amy forgets that Rory exists, even though the Doctor remembers.
Mm-hmm.
So it has some very interesting payoffs down the road. And it's something that obviously, we never got before in Doctor Who. So it's something very original idea, I think. All right. Anything else about the story that we missed? I know there's a lot going on. It's a two-parter, but anything that anybody else wants to discuss?
No, I don't have
right.
anything. No.
Yeah.
All right. See, we did our jobs. That's fantastic.
Good job.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So anybody have any favorite quotes they want to share from this story? Jesse, you got any quotes, or Tom?
Tom, I'll let you go first if you have some.
I like the "It's how he keeps score,"
Yeah.
because I like that it's repeated, and it's a nice shorthand way of showing that Amy understands the Doctor this early in their relationship. To see that River, who, like, by this time I figured that they were married. I just kind of thought that was a show I'd never see, like that it was that far off, and they're just
off camera.
Yeah. Because of the way they interacted, but it's nice to see characters have that insight into each other and let them, it's a nice way of establishing that.
Yeah, and you notice that Amy really picked up on the fact that you're totally his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which I thought was fun.
Yeah.
All right. Jesse, any quotes you want to share?
So, two,
Okay.
both, the Doctor, when he says, River Song, I could bloody kiss you. And she goes, oh, well, maybe when you're older, which I thought was just
I think that's a nice little dig on Matt's age.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And then when Amy says, how come you can fly the TARDIS? And River, oh, I've had lessons from the very best. And the Doctor looking smug, well, yeah. And then River, without missing a beat, it's a shame you were busy that day. I mean, just it just, I thought it's a perfect example of how he's just not quite there. He's trying, but she's just one step ahead of him
Mm-hmm.
and banter and cleverness. And then later you
That's
see
all
they
part of
get
the
closer.
chase.
It is part of the chase,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. How about you, Charles? You got a couple?
Let's see. Father Octavian saying, in 200 years, the planet was terraformed. Currently, there are 6 billion human colonies. And the doctor replies, Phew, you lot, you're everywhere. You're like rabbits. I'll never get done saving you. Which I'm sure makes him immensely happy because that means he gets to keep doing what he likes. And let's see, Octavian with River Song, talking about the doctor, and Octavian says, you trust this man. And River says, I absolutely trust him. And Octavian replies, he's not some kind of madman then? And River, without missing a beat, says, I absolutely trust him.
That was really
Ignoring
well
that
done.
madman part completely.
Yes.
So I thought that was great. Great quotes. It's Stephen Moffat. The script just, it's electric with the snappy dialogue and banter. And I'm sure we could spend a good while just going through all the great quotes in the story.
And
all right. Go any more?
Yeah, just because I didn't want to steal it in case any of you did it. We had already talked about it.
It's okay.
I wish I'd known
we
you
do
better.
it all the time from
I think
each other.
You've seen me at my best.
Yeah.
I think that one, it's nice to have is rare in Doctor Who kind of to see that kind of super memorable quote that's not also funny. Like it stands on its passion, not on its humor.
Well, I think there's a lot of dignity to that quote because, Father Octavian, the way, especially the way Ian Glenn delivers it, is that that he's very proud of what he's showing the Doctor at this moment in time, in his final moment. And I think that's really, it was great acting and great writing, I think, combined.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
All right, ratings. What's everybody's ratings? This should be interesting. So, Jesse, I'll start with you first.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, I really like this episode. I for all my concerns about the Weeping Angels, watching this again, it was a quick I guess an hour and a half, but 2 episodes. It flew by. I was entertained. I'm going to give it 9 out of 10 sets of handcuffs.
You, me, handcuffs. Why must it always end this way?
Yes, another great line.
Yeah.
Yes.
90% of Alex Kingston's lines are great lines. Let's face it.
It is. So. Yes, she is amazing.
All right. And Tom, what about you? What's your rating?
Well, I am going. I forgot the part where we do the clever thing of how many.
That's okay. You don't have to do the clever thing if you don't want to.
Okay. I'm gonna give it 7 out of 10. Amy Pond short skirts.
Excellent.
Because the episode doesn't stand as memorably to me, but a lot of its failings are my fault because I wanted more from if the Angels were going to show up, I wanted an episode that was as awesome as the first Angels episode. And the episode itself does exactly what it's supposed to do. It is entertaining and relatively consistent, and it's everything the episode should be. It's just that the moment you see the Weeping Angels, you think, it's like seeing a Borg episode in Star Trek. Like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be awesome. No, this is the David Koresh Hugh one. This is not awesome. Where it's my fault for bringing those expectations. Some of that is that that's what you want. You want people that invested in it, but also sometimes that comes back to bite you. And I think it's why I enjoyed it seeing it a second time, because I didn't have those expectations. I was kind of like lowered to the part that I could sit back and enjoy it and not wonder, why is this not this intricately plotted, clever show that I had seen before?
Yeah. As for me, I'm going to probably be the odd man out here because I thought this was a very strong episode. I think, there's been some comparisons. I think Moffat made this, that essentially Blink was almost like the first Alien movie, very atmospheric, more of a horror movie, and the sequel, Aliens, was much more action-oriented. And that's the kind of way I feel about, this story, is that it's essentially the Aliens to Blink's Alien. That it's 2 different types of stories, 2 different tones of story. but I appreciated it for what it was, and I think it's very solid. I thought it was, especially like I said, for being Matt's first story, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, yes, he's still figuring out his doctor in a lot of ways, and still has obviously room to grow. But right out of the gate, he hits some home runs, and he's got great chemistry, like I said, with Alex Kingston. So I'm giving this one 9 out of 10. Weeping Angels and Amy Pond's Eye.
So I did not pick Lipstick because I knew you were going to pick that, Charles.
Well, you don't know me like you think you do.
I know. After 6+ years of
I gotta keep surprising you.
Yes. Yes.
We've known each other since the 90s, and I still can surprise you once in a while. That's
right.
Good. Got to keep our relationship alive.
There we go. Yes. I am happy to be talking to two Ohio guys tonight. So.
Well,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when are you going to move up
cool
here?
Kids. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yes.
You know,
we have power here.
Oh.
Yes, whether it snows or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
All right. Can resist. Okay. So reverse the polarity. This one was interesting because obviously the Weeping Angels don't appear in the classic era. Something brand new, obviously, for the modern era. So I tried to figure out something that might be a little comparable, and without going into the entire episode, because I know we're running low or running over time. So I just want to mention that I recommend The Brain of Morbius from the classic era. If you like this story, you might want to check out The Brain of Morbius, which was the 5th serial, season 13, 1976, written by Robin Bland, which is actually a pseudonym for Terrence Dicks being rewritten by Robert Holmes back in the day, because that kind of thing went on. And this one where you have the TARDIS materializing the planet Karn because essentially the Time Lords wanted the Doctor to interfere in the events there. And the 4th Doctor, Tom Baker's Doctor, is not very happy about it. And while on the surface, Sarah Jane Smith finds this alien's escape pod and sees a valley filled with wrecked spacecraft. So essentially that's kind of like the Byzantium. And later on in the story, she ends up getting blinded by one of the Sisterhood of Karn. So essentially you have Sarah going through a good portion of the story, not being able to see and having to fumble around, kind of like Amy Pond in the story. So that's kind of like my main connection there. And if you're looking for a good outing that's it's a little bit creepy, but it's also kind of interesting, and it has a little bit of some great banter, but I think between Tom Baker's Doctor, 4th Doctor, and Elizabeth Sladen, the late Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, I definitely recommend checking out The Brain of Morbius. It's a classic from back in the day. And if nothing else, you get to see a great cheesy Frankenstein monster with a fishbowl head, and some good old 70s Doctor Who from the BBC back in the day.
Awesome.
You can't resist that, right?
Yes.
So listener feedback. We have two regular listeners writing in once again. We have Holly Mack and Dave Proctor writing in. So Jesse, do you want to pick one? I'll pick the other.
It's up to you. You tell me.
All right, I'll pick Holly's.
Okay.
So Holly Mack writes in about The Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, where she says very quickly, "Hey Charles, Jesse, and Tom." Well, hi Holly, how you doing?
Hey Holly.
Hey.
Forgot how much I enjoyed this two-parter when it first came out. We get the return of River Song and the Weeping Angels. We also find out that the wheezing sound the TARDIS makes is actually the parking brake. Loved Amy teasing the Doctor about how at some point in his timeline he marries River. Oh, Amy, if you knew what we know now. And also the major foreshadowing, even though we didn't know about it then, about the angels taking Amy and Rory. All these small little threads all joining together. Talk about serendipity. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. Great.
Short and sweet this
Yes.
time.
All right. From Dave Proctor. Hello.
Hi, Dave.
In the TARDIS. A great story this week. First, I want to apologize for the late email. got here in time. So to us,
Exactly.
I
It's all timey-wimey, Dave.
exactly. I noted to my wife how well they aged Karen Gillan over the arc of her time. We just watched Jumanji this weekend, and I was shocked how young she looks in this story. She is still a young woman. It certainly shows a difference in TV time and actual time passing. I really like the message in a museum. It's how the Doctor keeps score. That is a new level of self-centered. It's an early meeting with River Song. Alex Kingston, I'm a big fan. Yowza. Right there with you.
Yep.
Weeping Angels are by far the creepiest, scariest Doctor Who monster ever. I love this. You bit me. You left a mark with your teeth, and you have space teeth.
That was one of those things I was considering for my rating, by
yes,
the way.
that would have been a good one. Whoever holds the image of an angel itself becomes an angel, so now I'm afraid of my television. I had noticed until this watch that when the Doctor tells Amy to remember what he told her when she was 7, he had his coat back. Spoilers. The soldiers being unwritten was terrifying. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. That was a really neat.
Yeah.
They kept, no, it's always been just you and me. The Kraken time is a unique MacGuffin, but intriguing nevertheless. However, when they use it to give 11 more regenerations, spoilers, that was one time too many. When River is transported away in the end is reminiscent of the Wicked Witch disappearing in The Wizard of Oz. Oh, I think that's true. I hadn't thought about that.
Yep.
Man, Amy kissing on the Doctor, who turns out to be her son-in-law, rivals Princess Leia kissing on her brother. I give this story 9.9 wedding dresses hanging in a bride-to-be bedroom.
Well, Dave really liked this one.
Yes, and then he goes serious for a minute, and as you guys know, Dave is from the Colorado area. As I'm watching this, the active shooter situation was a few hours ago in Boulder, Colorado. My heart goes out to the families of the victims, including the as yet unnamed fallen Boulder police officer. I also am saddened again as the minimum wage workers are in the front line of a national horror story. This is the second Kroger shooting in a week. We really have to solve this and soon. Instead of the same old tired arguments, let's sit down and actually work out something. I have my own political view, and I'm keeping them to myself, but this isn't or should not be political. I don't have the answer. Perhaps we need people to send their suggestions somewhere where they can all be considered. Sorry about the soapbox. That's why I like Doctor Who. A being who tries to do what's right is fallible, but brings out the best in others. Thanks, Dave Proctor. And
Well, thank you, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Dave. And as a reminder, Dave is a recently retired police officer, so I know that is why this hit him very close to home. So
yeah,
thank
obviously
you for sharing.
he's got a little bit of skin in the game on this one. So
Absolutely.
So so we obviously thank Dave for his service, and also, this is obviously a very horrible tragedy that, unfortunately, is just the latest in a long line of horrible tragedies that aren't really needed, or that there's no reason why they should continue to occur, but they do.
Absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's I'm sure we could spend a whole nother podcast on that.
Yes, we could. Yes.
Yeah, but it's just very frustrating, and I get where Dave's, I think, frustration is coming from.
Absolutely, yes. I'm glad
to
share.
So if you want to be like Holly and Dave, and please do, if you want to be like the cool kids, write to us. Next Stop Everywhere SMG @gmail.com. That's Next Stop Everywhere SMG for Southgate Media Group @thegmail.com. You find us on Twitter @NextStopSMG on Twitter, Facebook, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, and Instagram Next Stop Everywhere podcast. So, Tom, where can they hear more of what you do, more of, Love and Caves and the Long Con card game, and get more information about all your wonderful projects?
The big thing is to go to patreon.com/Thom Zahler, THOMZAHLER. That's where you can sign up and get new installments of Love and Capes. You can get 4 pages a month for $1, and then levels go up from there, where there's sketches and bonus content and all sorts of cool stuff. I'm on Twitter and Instagram @Thom Zahler. I post not frequently but intermittently, and I hope to be clever and not overly important when I'm doing it. I don't take myself too seriously on it. Sometimes if you catch me when I've had a little too much wine, you'll see me start actually trolling for work like I did last night.
Are you drunk posting?
I try not to. I try to. If I do that, I try to text people. It gets me in sometimes more trouble, but much more focused trouble. Like I don't bring the entire world into it. I just bring one person into it. But yeah, I did actually kind of tell the guys at Thrilling Adventure Hour that I desperately want to write for them last night. So, but sometimes you got to throw that stuff out in the world.
Yeah.
I totally get it. So yeah.
Yeah. And Tom, I want to stress that Tom has an amazing selection of books, 4 volumes of Love and Capes, Warning Label, which is
5 volumes of Love and Capes.
5, that's right. Oh, yeah. That's it. Yeah. Warning Label.
Keep him honest, Tom. Keep him honest.
Warning Label, Unique Love Story, Long Distance, and you now can get Cupid's Arrow in trade paperback, right?
Yeah, that has not come from the printer yet.
Okay.
But that'll be up there soon. That was a Kickstarter that funded last year, and then pandemic and stuff. Also, we did a level where your love story could be in the comic, and I didn't appropriately realize, 1, how much effort it would be to get those stories out of people, and 2, how hard it would be to draw those stories and make them take place in 6 pages. So that was a little daunting, especially like as an artist, I hate drawing crowd scenes. One of them took place in a museum. I'm like, okay, I can get by with maybe there's just a few people in the museum. That's okay. The other one took place at frickin' Dragon Con.
I'll put a support column here. I'll put a support column there.
Yeah. But one taking a Dragon Con would be hard to...
which is nothing but crowds, and crowds in different costumes, so I can't use like stock art that I've drawn over the years. Like they all had to look like they were at Dragon Con. So
that's great.
Very nice.
Great. Everybody check out, Tom's kind enough to come on our podcast and share his love of Doctor Who. So hopefully everybody please reciprocate and give Tom all the love and the Patreon purchases you can supply. Definitely appreciate that, I'm sure.
If you look hard enough, the Doctor and sometimes his companions will show up in Love and Capes.
There you go. What better reason do you need than that? I don't think anything, right? Jesse, how about you? Where can they find you?
So you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I don't post there very much, but I did post today on Facebook because this is the 4th anniversary of me coming home from the hospital after colon surgery, which was kind of weird. And there was a picture of me in my Superman socks that Chris and Linda took that I was home from the hospital. So it's been weird seeing all these that it seems like a lifetime ago. But anyway, you can also hear me on Set Lessing Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast. Both Charles and Tom have guest starred on the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk to Springsteen fans from around the world, including other musicians. I have other fans of other musicians. I've had writers, and I've got Russ Burlington coming up where he's talking about he's crowdsourcing a book on Josie and the Pussycats, which is a fascinating behind-the-scenes story of that. I am taking a break from Fandom Zone, but I am supporting Charles and Nick. So why don't you tell us about those?
Whether you like it or not, yes. So Jesse, as someone who is now celebrating his 25th year of colon surgeries, I'm definitely sympathetic and appreciative of everything you went through. So as for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things. Come on, you.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here and Next Stop Everywhere. So Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish audios, and more. All kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts for Southgate Media, including, the Phantom Zone podcast, where DJ Nick and I are now discussing The Falcon and the Winter Soldier after Jesse ditched us for other podcasts. I see how it is, but hopefully he's still listening to us. Hopefully he's still supporting us. So we miss you, but for right now, it's just Nick and I, and we're having a ball. We recorded our first episode earlier this week, and obviously episode 2 is coming up this coming weekend, so stay tuned for that. And then Ghost with Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, whom you'll hear on Next Stop Everywhere once again very, very soon. as we talk all things Twin Peaks David Lynch. And right now we're going to be recording our second episode of the very obscure on-the-air ABC TV series that David Lynch and Mark Frost did way back in the day, just after Twin Peaks ended, which lasted a whole 3 episodes on ABC before being canceled. But it has a lot of Twin Peaks actors, and so obviously it's right in our wheelhouse to talk about. And this has been a very interesting deep dive into something that I haven't, completely forgot about for over 25 years. So hope everybody checks that out. And then on Drunk Cinema, that I also do with Zan, where we essentially have adult beverages, adult conversation, and watch essentially all of our favorite movies, doing our little commentaries as we, kind of kick back and relax and do our best Mystery Science Theater impressions watching these movies. We just finished talking Goldfinger, our 7th movie on Drunk Cinema, which is essentially our 007th movie, which of course featured Sean Connery and Honor Blackman, who appeared on Doctor Who back in the day in the story Terror of the Vervoids from the Colin Baker era. And then coming up, as soon as Zan's feeling better, we're going to be discussing, and this is at her request, we're going to discuss Forbidden Planet, the 1950s classic, which yours truly has never seen in its entirety. I've seen little bits here and there, but this will be the first time I've watched it altogether, and it should be very interesting. Kind of turn the tables on Zan, so the movie after that is going to be something that I picked that she hasn't watched, and I think that everybody's going to be pretty happy with the selection. I'll keep it there for now, leave a little mystery. Got to tease that for now, but please check us out on Drunk Cinema. I think you'll have a ball. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Oh, it's my pleasure, as always.
We really appreciated you, back in end of last year when you came on to talk to Lodger. We got to talk some more Matt Smith now. So I guess we need to find some more Matt Smith stories for you to talk about, or you going to dare to discuss a different Doctor?
Oh, we can branch out.
Okay.
All right.
I love Eccleston is dreadfully underrated, and I love David Tennant. He's my modern Doctor, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right.
I always love having you two because both of you are writers and think differently, and I always think we get an interesting discussion. So, thanks for being here. As always, Tom, you're always welcome.
Sure.
And Charles, thanks for, as always, keeping the ship running in the right direction and doing what you got to do.
You mean steering the Starship Titanic into the TARDIS? No. Crashing it, or crashing it like the Byzantium, perhaps, to make it a little more timely for what we're talking about. So coming up next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 225, as we go back to the classic era to discuss the 10th anniversary story from Doctor Who back in the day. From 1973, The Three Doctors. And joining us for that very special episode is, like I said, none other than Zan Sprouse, making her return on Next Stop Everywhere. And that's just not enough. So because this is such a special story to talk about, we're bringing in also Holly Mack, from the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, who is very supportive of our show. Obviously, if you know from our emails that we get from her all the time, and she supports us on Fandom Zone and other podcasts. So it's always great to talk with Holly, and so it'll be a foursome next time. And hopefully, Jesse, you're looking forward to this, because not only do we get John Pertwee, we get Patrick Troughton and a very little bit of William Hartnell, as it turns out in the story.
Yeah, I've never seen this one, so I'm kind of looking forward to see this 10th anniversary. It's going to be fun.
And the introduction of the evil Time Lord Omega.
Ooh,
so
okay.
This should be fun. Yeah, so hope everybody tunes in for that. This is a classic story from the classic era. And guys, if you don't have any final thoughts, Jesse, anything else? All right. So everybody, thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time right here for episode 225 of The Three Doctors. Zan Sprouse, Holly Mack, Jesse, and yours truly right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.